You know, one thing I've been thinking about you lately, just in watching movies, and I'm sure you've heard this before, but you're like becoming in all these big films. And you're pretty aware of that. I mean,
Yeah,
you
I'm kind of sneaking in while nobody's looking.
Well, I wouldn't call it sneaking, but I mean, you're in good smaller films too. But these are huge films. These are not modest little movies.
No, they're some of them are monumental films like Titanic.
But not everybody gets a chance to do that. People get a chance to be in one.
I've been exactly
Like 5 or 6.
I know. I know. I've been really lucky. If I was a baseball player, my stats would be pretty good.
Would that be great?
Exactly.
You'd play for the Yankees, then you go to Boston, you get traded back to the Yankees.
Exactly.
But you'd be in every World Series.
I just happen to end up exactly. But
it's kind of a cool
been
thing.
great, and you know, a lot of these films have been quality films. I mean, let's face it, some of the big effects, big budgeted films are big letdowns in many ways.
Big doesn't mean better.
No, but
sometimes they're great.
They can be great. Here's a movie we both saw as kids growing up on television. And what's great is to be able to now, here's a movie we can revisit. You know, our generation, the boomers, now have kids. I've got a 5-year-old son. And to be able to take them to see this movie in this new version that we loved as kids is kind of a special thing. That was part of the reason I jumped into it. I wanted to make a film I could take my son to see.
I remember, and I don't want to trash other movies, but I remember going to the remake of King Kong and being real disappointed because that film didn't really work.
Yeah.
And where this film really works, and you get it a sense, you know, the gorilla has to work. You know the actors can work because you've seen them in other things, but you've never seen this gorilla before. And it has to work, and it does.
I think, well, that's an interesting point for a couple of reasons I'll touch on. One of them is, you know, whose first movie King Kong was? Jessica Lange.
Yes.
And in our movie, we have Charlize Theron, who I think will, before it's all over, be the next Jessica Lange. She's an incredibly talented gal and was fantastic to work with on this movie.
So does that make you Jeff Bridges?
On a good day, on a good day, on a good day.
It's not Charles Grodin.
I think a lot of people found the original versus King Kong, the original of Mighty Joe Young, to be a little more of a heartfelt story. Mm-hmm. Because let's face it, he's more of they're both creatures are kind of these freaks. And in Joe's case, he's got an abnormality that's created this gigantism. In King Kong, he's this thing, you know, he's so bigger than life.
Right.
But
and it had a melancholy streak a mile wide in it too.
It did. It did. This thing celebrates, you know, this noble creature who's kind of has the innocence of a child, who's completely being, you know, preyed upon and manipulated and exploited, and finally, by the last reel, is running for his life, literally. And instead of this final moment, an act of preservation, what does he do? He climbs a flaming Ferris wheel to save a fellow creature to him, which is a small boy. I think this movie has good values for our kids. All of us who are raising kids now, we want to impart these values to our sons and daughters, to have a caring and a respect and a love of nature and of our fellow animals. And this movie has great chemistry. I think all of us are out here in Hollywood are starting to get a little better at, you know, the effects have exploded, the technology's exploded, and now we're starting to be able to become more organic in working with these new effects and making, I think, better characters to act out with in these stories. I don't know, it's kind of a long.
No, but that's true.
thing.
That's true. You have more experience doing that stuff. You know, when I hear about Bill Paxton, when I read about you, it always says Texan or Texas actor.
I like that.
Do you like that? How does that
Oh,
make you
certainly.
feel?
I had a wonderful childhood growing up in Texas. A lot of my parents actually met in Chicago. My dad was from Kansas City. My mother was from Joliet, Illinois. And they moved down to Fort Worth in the early 50s. That's where I was born. My older brother Bob was born in Chicago. And they were kind of embraced by this town and these people down there. And my parents were very vivacious, and they were an attractive couple, and they loved to entertain. And I had a great experience growing up down there. I don't get down there too much very often.
Sure.
One is rarely a prophet in one's own town. But
Well, it's the place you discover twice baked potatoes, great barbecue.
That's right.
And
Joe Garcia's.
And Joe T. Garcia, frozen margaritas.
Absolutely.
Good Mexican food, and where the Cowboys rule.
And I mean, to play Ben Johnson's part, I mean,
Yeah.
Ben Johnson for us Texans and Oklahomans, you know, he was right up there with John Wayne.
Yeah.
I
Cool.
think his passing was not marked as it should be, and in this movie coming out again, I hope someone does a definitive documentary on his life, because Ben Johnson's life, let's face it, it covers a broad scope of Hollywood history. I mean, it's going back to the Howard Hughes days when he started working with John Ford, all the way to working for like Peter Bogdanovich on The Last Picture Show.
Well, say hello to Texas for you.
Well, yeah,
All right, buddy.
Take a deep breath of
Nice
that
to see you.
sweet air.